Did you just crawl out of bed, honey?
Huh?
Did you just crawl out of bed?
The game
Did
tomorrow
you just
night.
get in?
She's starting to be like me.
Great show.
Yes, you did. Two people passed out.
I know, they passed out and laughed.
Do you always get such physical reactions?
Sometimes more than that. We were put out of Wyoming. We had 15 pass out in one show. And one of them fell eight tiers up out of the bleachers, concussion. We had to sit with her for 45 minutes, but she came out of it. I don't have anything now. She sued me for everything I got. No, not really. But she did. She fell. They didn't have the little things. It was in a gymnasium, and then she passed out of it.
Yeah, have some tomato juice.
But
There's a Coke down in
I don't
the
know. I think
other
it's
room.
some people when they see blood, they get a little oozy and faint, and that's just it doesn't have an impact where maybe we can stop a little bit this.
Well, did he do what he wanted to?
Yeah,
Honestly.
I think my brother should have been here.
I think my sister. My boyfriend should have been here. I don't think after I control this, I don't think I'll ever drink again.
Thank you. That's
I'm sad.
we're not, and a lot of people also, the things like the films, they, a lot of people get hung up on the scare tactics. You know, they say you're coming in and you're trying to scare them, not only the scare tactics, but trying to utilize and play on the side that scares the kids into not taking the drugs. But that's not what we're trying to do. But if I look back, and at the time, I wish someone had been there the day before Eddie died and could have scared us enough to let us know that drinking a fifth of whiskey is not one of the safest things to be doing. You know, and I guess I'm just looking back at my past and seeing some of the things and the stories. I'm writing my third book right now entitled So Much Hurt. And it's dealing with stories of kids that come up to me and share with me the things that are happening around America and this very thing. The kids that come to school every day and you never know what they left that morning at home. The situations they left. Some of them, their parents got bigger drug problems than what the kids got, but they have to deal with those kind of problems. And it's just a lot of things that have to be dealt with out there, and that's what my third book will deal with.
Well, I thought that the image of somebody drinking a fifth and dying from that was a very helpful image, because a lot of times we tend to think that it's the drugs. You know, we think of this difference between drugs and alcohol. We don't think about overdoses of alcohol being possible. And you really illustrated the overdose of alcohol having the same immediate impact that an overdose of something else could have.
And since you mentioned that, I talked to a group in right outside of Boston, Massachusetts. Like 2 or 3 6-packs of beer, one right after another, and died from an overdose of and you never think of beer in that way, you know. But it goes to show you can abuse just about anything that you want to put your hands on when you really stop to think about it. And young people are very vulnerable, especially that's one reason you see most of the pushers. They prey on kids in schools, in the high schools, the junior high. Last year, I went for my first time. Got a phone call. We go in and around New York City, and you're talking about some rough schools. There's some rough schools in those areas. But I was asked, and it kind of shocked me when the guy that had us there for the last 6-7 years in a row, he asked me, he says, this time when you come up to our area, would you mind going into some of our preschools? What they're going to do is bring a lot of the preschoolers together into one auditorium and let you talk to them.
4 and 5 year
4 and
olds.
5-year-olds. Said, would you talk to them? Well, my first reaction to that was, I said, why do you want me talking to preschoolers? I said, I mean, that's kind of a young group. I said, how could I relate to them? He says, you don't understand. And boy, this really just knocked me backward. He says, we have drug problems in 4 and 5-year-olds in this area. And, you know, we have a problem in our country when we got to deal with problems in kids that age. And no one really, I don't even think we can imagine the psychological problems that we're going to be dealing with in 10, 15 years from now from the kids that have become involved in coke addiction at 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, the crack babies that already have psychological problems and don't even know it, born in that condition. The years are going to tell, you know. Right now we're dealing with a problem, but we're going to be dealing with the aftermath of a lot of the problems that are being dealt with firsthand right now in a few years from now.
You said you did drugs and stuff. Get yourself out of there.
Well, I quit after my second suicide attempt. I tried to take my life twice. And after, when you're in that kind of condition, you realize obviously you're going nowhere fast, and you've got to change or else you're going to die. I don't think anybody in their right mind wants to die.
So you did it on your own?
I quit cold turkey. I was on my way one night, going to the hospital to check myself in, and instead I went on home, and I broke 3 different contracts that I had with the rock and roll groups that I was with at the time, because I knew I could not stay in that environment and get out of what I was doing. So I got away, I pulled back, I become a recluse, whatever you want to call it, and to stay away from it. And I broke cold turkey. Now the thing that I cannot mention in schools here is the religious aspect. And I wouldn't even really I don't want to, as far as bringing religion, because that's what's beautiful about America. It's freedom of worship. You know, you can be a Baptist, you can be a Protestant, you can be a Catholic, that's what's beautiful about America. But I do know one thing, you know, that our country was founded on one thing, and that was a belief in God. You know, the true and living God. Not all these aspects of religion, which is great, and it's great that we have that freedom, but we do put in God we trust on our currency. They pray before every session of Congress starts. You know, and God is the one thing we all have in common as far as and that's the word atheist. And so that is the one thing that I can't mention, but God was my cold. He helped me break a cold turkey.
Because I have a brother, he went through 3 or 4 different drug programs, and they kept him down the fireman house. I don't know if you know that, it's in Manchester. And he said that they had drug deals going on right inside the fireman house. You know, it's supposed to be to get you off drugs and keep you clean, and he had to stay there for like 3 months. And then, because he was really bad, he was threatening to kill his mother and everything else. And then he got in a lot of trouble, and he got put in a shock incarceration down in Concord. That's the only thing that got him off drugs, is that program. They're so strict. It's a prison, is what it is.
A lot of kids ask me, am I on a rehabilitation program? AAA or whatever. And
He goes to
you'd
those
be surprised
back
how many kids come to me, even in junior high school, with their little gold coins, you know, that they're Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, they're members of that program. What I'm doing right here is my program. Does that make sense to you? Every day, you know, during the school year, we go to schools, and it is a program.
Oh yeah, because those programs don't do nothing for you if you don't have a self-esteem inside.
Right. Just talking like this, and it helps strengthen one another. You know, knowing somebody else has been through the same thing that you're either going through or possibly could go through. And we went to Monty will tell you about Florida. We were in Cocoa Beach, Florida, and went to all the schools in Brevard County, right close to Cocoa Beach. And the one school there they called Little Vietnam, the school principal came to me. I mean, you're talking about a rough school. These were kids, I mean, the rejects. I don't think I shouldn't use that lightly, but the principal came to me before and says, it's not anything that before school out here to have drive-by shootings, people driving by and shooting kids, standing there waiting to go into school, selling crack every morning, you know, kids selling crack out in front of the thing, and this was the kind of school we go into a lot of these kind of schools, and as if kids don't have enough to plague their mind and to try to get things together, you know, while they're young. These other problems they got to deal with, those drive-by shootings, selling crack, having to say no to pushers. We went to a school in Newark, New Jersey. I mean, down in the middle of the city, and there's 15 guys had us there. 15 guys that brought us in, and I'll never forget the way that we were sitting on the front of my bus, and one of the guys says, "I want you to come here and look." And there was just like 200 or 300 kids that had formed, you know, they got around the bus, and they had like 10 or 15 officers that were there, policemen to protect our vehicles, the tractor trailer, the bus and everything. And he says, "I want you to look at these kids." And about all of them were elementary and junior high school students. And I was giving my books out and posters and everything. Those were the kids we were going to play to that night. He says, "I just want you to remember one thing." He says, "These kids walk about 4 blocks to school because, you know, every 4 blocks they have a certain radius and then they have another school because it's right down in a real populated area." He says, "These kids walk about 4 blocks to school, the most, you know, the most that they walk to school, and some of them walk a little less, obviously." But he says, on an average, when they walk to school every morning, most of them they'll have to say yes or no to a drug pusher at least 10 to 15 times. They're approached that many times. This is kids in elementary and junior high school. And he says, going home from school, it's the same thing. And you know, and I have to just thank God that I wasn't brought up in that kind, and I thank God that my children but there are some children that are being brought up in that kind of environment, that they have no other choice. They have to say yes or no. And sooner or later they say yes.
You talk about we have a real problem and an epidemic in our country. Is it your feeling that the drug problem is the symptom or the cause? And if it's just a symptom, what's it a symptom of?
The drug problem we have in the country today. I think it probably maybe in both directions. Some of it is a symptom, some of it is a cause. The symptom is that very same year, and I was a product of the 60s and late 60s, that was the era of permissiveness. If it feels good, do it. Do anything. It really don't matter, you know. Just do it.
Who's gonna agree?
I'm the same thing.
But there was a year that Madeline O'Hara, through legislation, worked hard and finally got anything to do with God taken out of our schools. Now, I'm not a minister, and like I say, I just very lightly have told him that God was my help and what gave me my strength. I think the symptom is a direct result of taking something out of our society that was basically the only thing that they had to hold on to anyway. And when you taken that out, then we saw the drugs that very same year. And if you don't believe me, look back. The very same year was that year that we saw the infiltration, not in a big way just overnight, but it started creeping in, and then we saw it get bigger and bigger and bigger, and now we're seeing what we have today. So there's the symptom of taking something out, leaving a void, and something else moving into that void. I mean, the law of physics tells us if you leave a void, something's got to move into it sooner or later. You take good out, you either put good back into it, or else you put evil back into it, or bad. And I think we're seeing a symptom of young people and what's happening in our schools today, of a breakdown in the home, the fabric of the home. There's more kids that stay in nurseries now than have moms and dads that stay at home with them, or to help bring them up. And I'm not putting down the lady that has to work or whatever, because we're just living in that kind of age, because it takes two to keep the home going a lot of times. But I think that we're seeing a breakdown of that kind of thing in the home, which is causing the symptom of drugs, and the kids are getting it. They're being left at the mercy of the pushers, the mercy of it, and you could just go on and on and on and on. And we're seeing a real problem in our country today. And the bottom line is that pushers will get out there. There's people that'll blow your brains out for a quarter. So why not I talk to being from Miami and around that area down there, I know guys that have flown drugs into this country and everything, and some of them make as much as $1.5 million to fly a plane load of cocaine into the country. $1.5 million. The bottom line is money, and the bottom line, other than the money, is it's our kids that ironically are the ones that are dying because of what they're bringing in.
Well, I tend to agree with you that there are a lot of causes, and you pointed to the cause of religion, and then the cause of just the way society is changing. And we certainly need to, when you have something wrong, you attack the symptoms, and that is, trying to get people not to do drugs. But we may also need to look at some of the causes that have to do with poverty and values changes and that sort of thing as well.
Did you ever have problems with your son?
Well, I think the poverty thing, the little kids that I was telling you about down in the middle of Newark, New Jersey, there's a good example of poverty. Because those kids have nothing. They steal from their mom and dad to buy the little vials of crack. So that is a good example of the poverty, and you're right. But it's not always poverty. There's some of the most affluent neighborhoods in the country that these kids have a lot of money to buy, I think.
Did you ever have a problem with your son going through the same, getting into it and all?
Oh, he's had all kinds of problems. No, I'll have to admit that he hasn't been perfect all his life, and he's had his flings here and there, but I got to say one thing, I'm real proud of him. He's turned out to be under the conditions and under the circumstances, considering who his father is, he's turned out pretty good.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah,
She wants to know how old you are.
21.
Blame it on me, Bethany.
How do you maintain a family life when you travel 320 days a year?
Huh?
How's what?
How do you maintain a family life when you travel 320 days a year, and how often have you how long have you been doing that?
Oh, we usually fight once or twice a day.
And your wife travels with you?
My wife, I never let her travel with me.
I was gonna say, what kind of a marriage is that? I would just my husband.
No, sorry.
That's a physical reaction.
Hey, you made his day.